Oh, it's all just so hopeless. Oh, God, what's the point of even doing all this?
Don't give up, Spice.
God? I swear everything I did during The Favourite was a one-time thing.
What? No, it's not God. It's me, the visage of popular internet satirist, Jreg, and I'm here to tell you to keep going.
But what's the point? Everything just seems so bleak and insurmountable. Am I inciting real change with my content? I truly believe in what I preach, but am I just another well-meaning socialite taking up space on a platform that's already saturated by us?
Spice, you can't give up hope. Did I give up hope when YouTube misspelled my name on this silver play button? This should be a lowercase r, Spice. That was really hard for me. Did I give up hope when I found out that members of my own family hadn't rung that bell to keep up with my latest updates? Did I give up hope when I ran into someone on the street who recognized me and then I later found out...
I don't see how any of this is relevant to my position.
Look, it's either this or you try to get your job at the seafood restaurant back.
Wow, you're right. I did hate that job with every fibre of my being. Thanks, Jreg.
Oh, no, I'm not actually Jreg. I'm a stress-induced mirage. But seriously, you should get more sleep. Ooh.
New year, new me, motherfucker.
Fell off immediately. Oh, much better. Hello, spicy people of the internet. My name is Spice8rack, aka the tequila-stained futon that you were conceived on, and welcome back to the channel. Now, politics is a multifaceted, deeply complicated topic to think about, let alone discuss. Every social issue has an economic aspect. The slightest shift in an economic variable can have ramifications all around the globe, and despite consistently attaining a 80% approval rating, I continue to get assassinated by the capitalist Battenberg group whenever I play Democracy 3. Stop killing me, you greedy maniacs. But I've been wondering for a long time. Magic the Gathering has a multiverse of worlds, each with one to many political factions and governments. Just how do they stack up against one another? Now, comparing each party on a policy-by-policy basis would be a fruitless endeavour. Partly because I am but a mortal man with finite stamina, but mostly because we just don't know enough about each party, specifically where they stand on more than one or two key policies. Yes, we know that the Sorry. Bastard! Bastard! Out of my shoe! Yes, we know that the Cairns of Jund love dragons and hate mages, but where does Kresh the Bloodbraided stand on prison reform or goblin unionization? His silence on these topics is frankly deafening. Luckily for me, journalists have discovered an element of politics that can seemingly be discussed and quantified without having to consider the politics of a person or party at all, and that is electability, which is definitely not just a vague buzzword used to distract the conversation away from any meaningful discussion about policy. So come with me now as we answer the question on all of your sopping wet lips. Just who is Magic the Gathering's most electable government? And if we're going to be discussing politics, I think I need to slip into something a little bit more comfortable. Oh, well, that's a lot better. First, we need to work out who and what counts as a political party. Collins' dictionary defines a political party as an organisation of people who share the same views about the way power should be used in a country or society. So this means that organisations like the Tolarian College aren't counted because, at least in their current form, there is no official party line on how to change Dominaria using wizarding power. And considering their history, thank God! Groups like the Wild Elves of Eldraine live without any real perceptible governance or organisation, barring their annual midwinter hunts, so they're also out of the running as well. I'm also only going to be sticking to parties and governments which are currently active or if we are given no reason to believe that they are no longer active. For example, despite the events of Kamigawa taking place over 1,000 years before the events of War of the Spark, we're not given any real reason to suspect that the new Konda dynasty or the Orochi snake people of the Jukai Forest would have ceased to operate between then and now. However, after the events of Time Spiral, for example, it's not unreasonable to assume that any Dominarian society that we haven't directly encountered during our return to the plane in 2018 are either completely destroyed or incredibly different to how we last saw them. I'm sure that the Kippamu city-states of northern Jamura, for example, have a kick-ass marketing strategist now. However, there is also a non-zero chance that they weren't all just blown up and replaced with orcs during Dominaria's time apocalypse. After scouring Scryfall, wikis, story articles, and my own himbo memory for organizations that fit this criteria, I came out with 76 governments and/or political parties to compare and contrast, which frankly is a fucking relief after the 1,094 characters I had to rank in August. But what makes a party or candidate electable? I wasn't sure, so I emailed my local MP, and when she didn't get back to me, I emailed her again, but this time I pretended to be the father of a small child. Dear Redacted, my son, Tomic, wanted me to email you in regards to a class presentation he's been asked to prepare by Redacted School. After December's election, he's gotten acutely interested in politics and wanted to know what makes a person or party electable. He's only 9, but sharp for his age, and I know he'd be over the moon to hear back from you or a person on your staff. I hope this finds you well, and I look forward to your reply. Yours faithfully, Dr. G. Slowbad. And this time, they replied. Dear Dr. Slowbad, thank you very much for your email. As you can imagine, Redacted is quite busy, but she sends you and Tomic her warmest regards. I was a chief strategist on Redacted's re-election campaign last month, and I think I can help. The first thing you need is a clear message that people can believe in and that promises change. If this was a school election, this might be something like promising an extra hour of playtime or more funty bunooks in the library. Secondly, you need to stand out from the crowd. That's why all different parties wear different colours and have different logos. Kind of insulting to the intelligence of my imagined child there, but whatever, I guess. Third, you need a strong leader, a good speaker, and a kind person to be the smiling face of your party. Finally, you should come up with a punchy slogan, which is a short message which tells everybody who you are and what you stand for, so voters will remember you. Thank you once again for your email, Dr. Slowbad, and best of luck to Tomic. I'm sure his class will love his presentation, and it's so good to see children so interested in politics. Kind regards, Redacted. P.S. When is Mill vs. Discard coming up? God damn it! So the first thing a successful election campaign needs is a strong and clear message. Voters want to know what you stand for by reading a single headline. The message also has to promise change. Most of the people in the world aren't doing so hot right now, with countries like the US experiencing an ever-increasing cost of living alongside nearly half a century of wage stagnation, and cities like New Delhi having pollution so bad that some business owners have started opening stores to sell clean air. This isn't a bit, this is an actual store. 2012's The Lorax is a documentary now. Now, because of the slightly ambiguous wording of this, the change that you promise doesn't necessarily have to benefit the majority of the electorate, but in the face of whatever the status quo is, any change whatsoever can be spun as change for the better. So unfortunately, any party who are pretty content with how things are immediately out of the running. So that includes Maeo the Animar's Naya Party, the Council of Seven of New Benalia, New Argive, Queen Marchesa's Black Rose Dynasty, the Orochi Snake People, the Salumgar Brood, the Vampire Bloodlines of Innistrad as united under Olivia Voldaren, and the Fae of Lorwyn / Shadowmoor. All of them fall at this first hurdle. Also, a quick note on Lorin and Shadowmoor. We don't know what the societies look like. There's a new day cycle on the plane now where it's like it's Shadowwin or whatever. They've been combined. So technically they shouldn't be on this list. But everybody bloody yelled at me when I didn't include Sig Rither Cutthroat on my bloody best friend's video. So balls to it. We're going to make educated guesses. All right? Stop yelling at me. I'm not your dad. That was a bit dramatic. I'm really sorry. Could you get that? Could you get that? Could you just look at the drama? Don't touch it. It's mine. We also, at this point, lose all of the parties that don't really have a clear or coherent political message at all. So this includes the Giants under the rules of Roshin the Meanderer, Kamigawa's Moonfolk, the Calfei Elves, the Agents of Sneak, Kresh the Blood-Braided's Independent Jund Warriors for Change Party, and House Demir, who would only tell you their plans for governmental reform if they could guarantee that you would be assassinated by a vampire before you told anybody else. We also, at this point, lose almost all of the political parties of Theros, including the 3 human policies and the 10 temples, because, frankly, I have no idea what most people on Theros believe at this point. Like, what happened to Heliod's followers now that he's propping up the underworld? Like, who is Siona, and does she represent a new, hitherto unknown polis on the plane? What happened to Anax and Cymede that caused one of them to no longer be in the set and one of them to be a resurrected demigod? Like, who's running Akros now that their royal family are just AWOL? If only we'd had some freely available story articles written by an in-house team of creative writers that could have shed a little light on all of these burning questions. Don't worry though, at least we've got these Did You Know Gaming style character bios that hopefully are going to flesh out all of the needed story. And you have spelt Heliod with an S? It's a 6-letter word! What are you doing? We also have to say goodbye to all of the political parties whose central platform is fundamentally flawed, such as the River Heralds of Ixalan, whose main flagship policy of protecting the immortal sun is kind of moot now that the Sun Empire have stolen the immortal sun. It's kind of had a lot riding on that one thing. Similarly, we also lose the Church of the Dusk Rose. Until recently, the vampires, as led by Vona, were all about expanding their theocracy. That was until they met their actual deity on Ixalan, who saw what they were doing and was all like, What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? So they're going to need to do a little bit of internal reshuffling before running a definitive campaign. We also lose the progress engine of New Phyrexia as run by Jin Gataxis. The progress engine are pretty open about the fact that most, if not all of their projects will take an indefinite, if not infinite amount of time to complete and perfect, which, although refreshingly honest, is also completely unpalatable to literally everybody. Urabrask's Quiet Furnace is also running on a slightly confused platform of both expanding the glory of the great work, but also peacefully allowing dissenters to live amongst us. Like, you can't really do a peaceful and ethical invasion and conquest and conversion of an entire world and society. Doesn't stop America from trying, though. The Golgari, Selesnya, and Legion of Dastardly Doom are all too busy in respective leadership rows to run a good campaign at this point, and Ailey's Eternal Pilgrims took a big hit in popularity after the Eldrazi who they worship got blown up by 2 girlfriends, a male model, and a Twitch streamer. Led by Moltani, the Yavimaya party's only demonstrable plan for change was to, kill Yargul Glutton of Urborg, and I hope you could understand why I am immediately disqualifying them as a result. Tymaret of Odunus directs his followers to steal the emotional and physical wealth from others, only to hoard and then destroy it for no good reason. aka the very caricature of what conservatives believe socialism is. Crossbreed Labs and the Order of the Widget are somehow both an even more confused Simic and Izzet party, and the Ajutai and Atarka broods immediately present a glass ceiling for their non-dragon voters. And the final party that loses out at this early stage in the campaign is, surprisingly, the new consulate government of Kaladesh. When I started writing this video, I assumed that the new consulate government would be one of, if not the most electable political party out of the bunch. But as I did the reading, I found it surprisingly difficult to find what this new organization stands for that wasn't already achieved in the immediate aftermath of the Renegade Revolution. Like, the prisoners of the Dund compound were freed, restrictions on Aether usage were dropped, and now Pierre Nillar, who was the face of the revolution, has just become another bureaucrat in a slightly improved system. I could not find one reference to any reassessment of illegal sky whaling operations. Not a single mention of greater funding for public education services. Like, this inventor has discovered a means of dignifying the deaths of their fellow Aetherborn. And instead of their invention being picked up and funded and being made widely available by the government, they are reduced to hawking it on the corner of some street like an Apple salesman. Yes, the Renegades implemented a great many very necessary social reforms, but this government is acting as if that's good enough, and gosh dang it! Sky whales are still being killed in record numbers. We can do better! Okay, so that's 32 parties who don't even make it past the exploratory committee. Next, we need to get to your parties standing out, offering a unique blend of person and policy. There may be 5 different all of our troubles can be solved by sacrificing ourselves to the demons we worship parties, but only one of them would institute mandatory clown school. Shadowwind's environmentalist societies, the elves and the tree folk, and the fighting against an existential threat / horror parties, Hazoret's Nactimum survivors and the Mirren resistance would have fought against themselves to share the limelight. However, the united Zendikari forces under General Tazri managed to bring together both these key policy points into one powerful pro-world, anti-monster message. There are a couple of parties which really only do to compare against each other. For example, the Kologan and Dromoka broods. Both are dragon-led parties which offer a significantly different form of dragon worship, but they both tell you that you, as a lowly human and/or literal dog, can still attain honor and fight in their midst. But if we're going to be comparing the two, really, flowering desert cities in a battle of optics kind of beats out some stinky tents. Along with the now defunded Kologan party, we have 3 other pillaging-based prospective governments, and these are the Krenko's Mob, the Goblin Explosioneers, and the Brazen Coalition. Now, whilst you might think that the Pirate Party beats out the other 2 on a purely superficial difference, you'd be wrong. You fool! Old Buzzbark has managed to combine both pillaging and industry in a way that would make even the most soulless, heartless oil baron shed a tear in pride. This marrying of important economic development alongside a liberal attitude to safety regulation is sure to make them stand out as rebels with a cause. When it comes to authoritarian parties, the cream of the crop is really the Boros Legion and the Azorius Senate. But if we're going to get right down into nitty-gritty, the Boros Legion is just a crusade-flavoured Azorius. Don't come for me now, Boros stands. I will pour 7-Up all over your chainmail, and you know that will be a bastard to clean. The Boros Legion also have the additional hurdle of needing to stand out in a crowd of similarly angelic / religious parties. Bant's Knights, Thalia's Order of St. Traft, the Orzhov Syndicate, the New Condor Dynasty, the Machine Orthodoxy, the Church of Serra, and the Elementals of Shadowin. Now, it's not unheard of for two similar parties to run against one another and do pretty well in the polls. In my country, for example, the Brexit Party and UKIP are virtually indistinguishable, and the Lib Dems are just Tories with yellow rosettes and #revoke in their Hinge bios. With so many religious parties in the running, it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that more than one breaks out. And I've determined that out of all of them, the top two parties in the running are the Church of Serra and the Machine Orthodoxy as standouts. For Serra, their bold angel welfare program, which grants guardian angels to citizens for free, is just too radical to ignore. The party of Serra asks, why, in the richest plane in the multiverse, do the top 1% own over 50% of all the world's angels? #Seraph equality now. And Elishnor's Machine Orthodoxy beats out all of the other more restrained religious parties through the sheer force of aesthetic alone. Yeah, get it, girl! With Norn in the running, all of the other Phyrexian praetors would doubtless give her their endorsement, and so they are also now out of the running. The anti-tyranny parties are up next, with strong contenders from the Oreskos Leonin, the Paliano Loyalists, and the Keldan forces under Rada. But out of all of them, only Adriana's Loyalists are fighting for genuine systemic change, seeking to replace the Black Rose monarchy with an elected democracy. Also, this is a completely unrelated aside, but I genuinely can't think of a single fantasy story that revolves around the removal or replacement of a monarchy with anything other than a slightly nicer king. The formation of a monarchy into a republic seems to be this super interesting time in our history that I can't really think of many fantasy stories that talk about that. Do you know any fantasy novels which discuss and portray that aspect of human history? Why not leave me a comment as you enjoy this advertisement, tailor-made just for you. Unless you have adblock on. Fuck you. We have a few more parties to cut in this section: the New Keldans, as run by Garner the Bloodflame, and the Shadowin Kithkin, as commanded by Bridget. Now, these parties may seem like oil and vinegar on the surface, but they actually are linked by a shared political passion, and that is unambiguous xenophobia. Garner's bigotry isn't really given much of a fleshing out, apart from her character card, which just calls her a racist, whereas the Kithkin's more deniable xenophobia, where they self-isolate into cities that just happen to only allow Kithkin in, is a little bit more palatable to people who write opinion articles called "I'm a liberal who thinks that immigration must be restricted," like Jerry Kramer, who is a senior research fellow at the Center of Immigration Studies, which is a Southern Poverty Law Center designated hate group. Oh, how did that get in there? What? Nah, that's crazy. The last two parties who share similarities are quite different to the Kithkin, but are both Shadowin based. And these are the Mero, as led by Sig, who steal knowledge to redistribute it in the form of lessons, and the Bogart tribes, as led by Auntie Ward, who steal experiences, which they then share around. Whilst experiences is a little bit more of a vague term in comparison to knowledge, it does cover a wider variety of shared commodities, like smells and tastes are experiences, but so is affordable housing and drug reform. Speaking of goblins being more electable, the Gruul tribes and the Crandall Horde werewolves, which I hope I got right, have extraordinarily similar anti-civilization sentiments, but the Gruul just have a more diverse support and volunteer base, and the werewolves are run by a guy who insists on calling himself the Alpha. So, actually, either one of them could probably win an election, now I'm saying it out loud. Esper is ruled by a transhumanist sphinx who believes the path to a perfect society is through physical augmentation with Ethereum, which kind of puts it in the middle ground between the transhumanist Simic and the vaguely technological Izzet League. However, both aforementioned parties just have such a distinctive look and message that I fear that Esper would just feel like a watered down comparison between the two. There are a few parties which don't actually need to fight for the limelight. For example, the High Throne of Eldraine is the only monarchy left on the ballot. The Voldanian merfolk's approach to trade and economic warfare is unlike any other party here. Merrin of Clan Neltoff's domination fueled by vengeance and zombie dragons angle is, well, certainly a unique policy position to take, and the Sun Empire's marrying of pro-nature values with vicious retaliatory colonialism just knocks all comparisons out of the park, really. This leaves us with 17 parties on the campaign trail, but now it comes to the debates. Now we see figurehead versus figurehead, and much like the toxic love triangle in Yorgos Lanthimos' The Favourite, some will be left cleaning the rabbits, and others will be crowned queen. I think that was the plot of the movie. I was doing other things at the time.
You know, I could fit one more Sylvanian family doll in my mouth. Nobody's watching me. Everybody's paying attention to the movie, and it's not like God can see.
I don't know when I'll cut on that. Okay.
About there.
Yeah. Immediately, we have to wave goodbye to all of the leaders and their parties who regular voters just will struggle to connect with. Slyn Voda and Dromoka both have interesting policy ideas, but the general size and language barrier will just distract during a debate. Also, whilst some leaders will try and stand out to voters using physical accessories like a sharp pair of glasses or a fun tie, I feel that old Buzzbark's buzzsaw arm may be gilding the lily somewhat. We can also wave goodbye to Lyra Dawnbringer, who, whilst her policies do aim to help the most vulnerable in society, she does reside in a flying cathedral in the sky, which, just from an optics angle, yikes. High King Kenrith's throne party is also out of the running here, mainly because the king is still reeling from a scandal where his love children disappeared from this plane of existence after he got turned into a deer for 9 months, but also partly because my audiobook speedrun of the Wildred Quest didn't do as well as I thought it would, and frankly I'm bitter. Next, we lose all of the leaders who are weak in comparison to their predecessors. Now, to show you what I mean by this, look at Prime Speaker Vannifar. Now, her tenure as Prime Speaker comes off of the back of Zegana, and whilst Zegana was a very big name, she wasn't everybody's cup of seawater, and so Vannifar doesn't suffer in comparison. However, Ralzeric, Brigid, and Borborygmos all have to contend in the shadow of their predecessors, Niv Mizzet, Gaddock Teague, and that bratty twink who owned my ass so hard I retired for a week, respectively. The Sun Empire also gets booted off at this point because they are led by Emperor Electes, and your boy isn't on a magic card, so he's got absolutely no name recognition. And to prove my point, the Sun Empire is actually led by a guy called Apaktzek, and literally none of you noticed that I swapped their names. As such, we have to look for who could lead the Sun Empire who has name recognition, and unfortunately Whatley has disavowed their militarism, so the next best thing we have is Atla Palani, who, as good as she may be as a gardener, she is just a gardener. Staying on the subject of past and present leaders, Lavinia comes as a breath of fresh air for the Azorius Senate in comparison to the previous leader, who was Dovin Barn for like 2 days. But unfortunately, as we found out between January and December 2019, nobody wants to elect a cop. And that leaves us with our final few. The Simic Combine, as led by Prime Speaker Vannifar. The Boggart Coalition, led by Ms. Auntie Wart. The Zendikar Alliance, led by General Tazri. The Cult of Rakdos, led by Rakdos. The Machine Orthodoxy, led by Elishnorn. Clan Neltoff, led by Merrin. And the Paliano Loyalists, led by Captain Adriana, who just escapes the unfortunate branding of being a cop because she quit her job just before the election to fight against the corrupt power structure that she once supported. and as we all know, ACAB, Adriana, convincingly anti-Black Rose. Our final stretch to determine which two parties are going to face up against one another in the general election will be, as every political commentator knows, how good their slogan is. These slogans will be taken from quotes direct from the leaders of each party, and we will only slightly edit them down. We're not going to add anything to them. So something like General Tazri's quote,
"Our people and our very lands disappear as if they never were. We no longer fight for glory or honor. We battle now for the right to exist,"
is chilling and can be easily edited down to "fight for the right to exist," which is punchy, powerful, and short. Not all candidates are so blessed with a wealth of good quotables that we can draw a slogan from. For example, the only quote I could find on any card directly from Auntie Wart is,
"My ears say it hisses. My fingers say it burns."
and I honestly don't know if there's even a starting point to make that viable. Meryn of Clan Noltoff has a similar issue with her lack of quotables. Her one quote, "May all the cairns of Jund be toppled," is great for the radical demographic of Jundish cairn topplers, but what does that really say to other groups in the multiverse? What does that slogan say to the blue-collar Girapurian artificer, or the Urborg-based skin witch, who just wants to know why Dominaria, one of the richest planes in all of the multiverse, is one of the few to institute any kind of paid maternity leave? Like, what's up with that? The Simic and the Machine Orthodoxy don't have a problem with raw quotables to draw from, but most of them, they come across as a bit too imposing, too hand-holdy. For example, a better ravnica starts with a better Simic. Bring Phyrexia's magnificence. Voters don't want to vote for a government who promises to fix all of their problems independently. They want to be part of that change. When sentient racist mop Boris Johnson ran in 2019's election here in the UK, he didn't run with "I'll get Brexit done" or "We'll get Brexit done." It was just "get Brexit done." You the voter, are voting to get Brexit done. You have agency in this. You are going to be very pissed when 2021 comes around and Brexit is still very much happening. But not all parties have such an inept PR team. For example, Demon Lord Rakdos has a wealth of quotes which seem completely unusable. Like, "Rage, my servants, our ancient power is renewed in blood." Like, what are you going to do with that? You're going to editorialize it. That's what you're going to do. Take a couple of those words out, swap them around a bit, and you get "renew our power." Boom, unifying. Boom, call to action. Boom, evokes a fictionalized past where everything was better before these bloody progressives got their hands on it, and I have turned Rakdos into bondage regressives. And finally, we have the Paliano loyalists with the fantastic quote from Adriana, "My sword is pledged to the defense of this city, not to the throne or the usurper," which just becomes "pledged to the city, not to the throne, or not to the usurper," which is a fantastic quote for a local election. Much like with Meryn of Clan Noltoff, this quote only really speaks to a very specific demographic. What about outside the city? Adriana? What about the countryside? Adriana, I think the farmers would like to participate in the social revolution too. You have failed to consider the democratic application of tractors, Adriana, you metropolitan bastard. And so that leaves us with two parties, the Cult of Rakdos and the United Zendikari Forces. One leather-clad conservative party and the other a coalition of radical ecologists. Who wins? Well, that's actually where the last factor comes in, which is the most powerful factor in contemporary politics, and that's resources or money. Every campaign needs money to run, and as the media evolves and expands, there are an ever-increasing range of places where you can and in fact need to reach voters through, and you need a lot of money to be considered a viable candidate today. To get money, you need to fundraise, and you can do this in one of two ways. The first is to rely on a relative few, but very big, donations from companies, interest groups, and If you live in America, where Citizens United have managed to argue that spending equals speech, good on them, super PACs, which are organisations that large companies and large donors use to pool resources for one or more political campaigns and skirt election finance law. You can receive a seemingly unlimited amount of donations through these sources, and they come with the additional benefit of free social capital if you manage to be the preferred candidate of an organisation or a rich donor with ties to the media. For example, it is not a coincidence that the only leader of the Labour Party here in the UK that has seen the party to an election win since the 1980s was Tony Blair, who also just happened to be the godfather of Rupert Murdoch's daughter. The elephant in the room when it comes to accepting donations from very rich people and very rich companies is that more often than not, these groups tend to have their own interests at heart. When oil companies, media barons, tech giants and arms manufacturers, when they endorse a specific candidate or a party, it is not only because they don't anticipate losing their place at the top of the fiscal food chain as a result of that candidate's election, but it's also because those kinds of donations, that kind of massive money, tends to inexplicably sway a politician's perspective and opinion on any given policy. It is no coincidence that candidates who accept massive donations from the chief executives of private health insurance companies, for example, are much less willing to back free at the point of use healthcare when compared to candidates who are mainly funded through grassroots organising and individual donations from regular people. And that's the second way that you can fund your campaign, through grassroots organising, where you gather small donations from the regular working people of the city or the country that you are running to lead. It's a lot harder to get a grassroots campaign up and running. You don't have access to that massive burst of corporate wealth. However, when the ball starts getting rolling and people start uniting, grassroots movements can often financially eclipse their corporate counterparts. And whilst it's good and absolutely necessary for people to fund grassroots organisations and movements that they believe in, it's also vitally important that people lend their physical and emotional labour. They volunteer for these movements. They go out, they knock on doors, they make calls, they be part of the change they want to see in their community, nationally and abroad. Those who enjoy their position of power in the current status quo are willing to do anything to make sure that you don't believe that radical change can be possible. And these people who are powerful tend to be rich, and they tend to own things like newspapers and like media corporations and social media companies. And they've got a bit of an advantage over grassroots movements that are relying on people power. But the more people that get involved, the more people power they have. But we have to remember that in the face of insurmountable odds, the Eldrazi of Zendikar were defeated by the collective will and might of thousands of individuals. Together, we can defeat the ghouls who would seek to keep things how they are, or even take us backwards, in the exact same way. And so this, of course, brings us to the final question: who is the most electable Magic the Gathering government? And the answer is General Tazri, but only if you're willing to fight for her. Thank you so much for watching. Slowbat's flag is deepest red, it's shrouded oft our martyred dead, and though their limbs grew stiff and cold, their heart's blood dyed its every fold. So raise that goblin banner high, beneath its folds we'll live and die. Though zombies flinch and merfolk sneer, we'll keep Slowbat's flag flying here.
I want to say a massive thank you to all of my $10 patrons, including Adam Gable, an alt-right sleeper agent who gives money to communists Idika, Anthony G. Reap, Bassick, Bradley Hutchison, Brian Dunn, Chase Beard, Chris DeVos, Causa, Darius Rudaminer, David Vestal, Dennis, Drew Pierce, Dystopico, Exidian, Elspeth Deserved Better, Erica Hamel, Ethan Abraham, Flame Consumes, Georgi Layubanov, Hoopered Up, In response, I bolt myself. Joshua M. Stephan, Kalia Whithart, Kieran Pollard, Kurd Ape Apologizer, Lachlan McAllister, Leftist Tech Support, Literally a Ghost that Pushes Over Candles, Linnea, Matty O. Tank 1, Melinda Phantom, me, Mordella Morana, Ornithopter, Ross King, Magic Arcanum, Sasha Evelyn Francis, Sen, Silent Celine, Scald627, Sky Johnson, Solace Ike, Speedy Koala Tragedy, Spooksman, Stingray, Swan Hunter, The Lyrics to All Star, Turhan Brace III, Vittorio Grace, Vladimir Gorvikov, Xenon and Zoltai, as well as the rest of my fantastic patrons. This channel is made possible thanks to you.
To raise that goblin banner high, beneath its folds we'll live and die though. Zombies flinch and merfolk sneer, we'll keep Sloban's flag flying here. Also, Lamau at the doofuses that think Medicare for all couldn't work. My government's been kneecapping the NHS since the 70s, and it's still one of the best healthcare systems in the world. I can call an ambulance up and not bankrupt myself. What are you doing, America? Get